Your imagination is incredibly powerful. It can solve complex problems and build entire empires. But that exact same tool can trap you in a cage. Take a look at this chart mapping how we use our inner worlds. It shows that a solid 73% of people actively use fantasy for healthy goal planning, building a mental blueprint for what they want to achieve. But right next to that group, the survey data reveals a competing trend. About 61% of people rely on their imagination for pure escapism and coping, using it to hide from the stress of their daily lives. And then there is this segment right here. A full quarter of individuals report that their fantasy life is actively damaging their real-world relationships. 1 in 4 people are letting their inner world harm their outer one. We are caught in a modern tug-of-war. The highly curated, vivid world inside our heads is increasingly competing with the mundane, physical reality sitting right in front of us. Understanding how you use your imagination is critical. It comes down to whether your mind is acting as a flight simulator, preparing you for reality, or an ejector seat, pulling you out of it completely. Recognizing the difference is what determines if you actually reach your potential. Let's look at the healthy side of this equation first. Psychologists call it integration, a state where your brain uses fantasy as a psychological flight simulator to safely test out different scenarios. When you mentally rehearse a tough conversation with your boss before it actually happens, you are using fantasy to regulate your emotions and process complex feelings in a low-stakes environment. This mental workshop naturally builds empathy too. By imagining how someone else might react to your words, you are actively simulating their perspective and anticipating their needs. Psychologists view this mental rehearsal as an essential evolutionary feature, one that builds real-world resilience and helps us adapt to new challenges. By giving us a safe space to test our ambitions before executing them in the physical world, adaptive fantasy provides our lives with tangible direction and motivation. But there is a dark side to this spectrum. This is the point where fantasy stops acting as a simulator and becomes that ejector seat, launching you out of reality entirely. Clinicians call this maladaptive daydreaming. It is a psychological condition where retreating into fantasy becomes a compulsion, one that severely disrupts a person's ability to function at school, at work, or in their personal relationships. To understand this trap, consider an old fable about a young, highly capable warrior. One day, he is visited by a mysterious floating entity calling itself the Spirit of Seeing, which grants him the power to vividly envision anything he desires. The warrior does not suffer a sudden, violent defeat. Instead, his downfall is a gradual, slow-burning erosion of his daily effort. He starts skipping his physical sword training. The immediate, effortless gratification of watching perfect battles and beautiful visions in his mind feels vastly more satisfying than the painful friction of actual hard work. This magical spirit mirrors our modern digital environment perfectly. The infinite scroll on your phone, the achievement loops in video games, and algorithmic feeds are all explicitly designed to supply our deepest desires without requiring any real-world effort. In the fable, the dark twist is eventually revealed. The spirit was actually a demonic entity all along. It knew that fighting the warrior directly was too risky, but feeding him a slow drip of endless fantasy would render him completely too weak to fight back. The modern escapism economy works the same way. By constantly feeding our brains the unearned emotional rewards of success, it pacifies our drive to achieve, leaving our actual potential to gather dust. The solution here is not to completely kill your imagination. If you strip away your inner life, you are left empty, devoid of creativity, and without any vision for your future. Mastering the mind requires balance. It involves the active anchoring of your rich inner life back to the tangible, physical world. The first step is to identify your specific emotional triggers. Notice when feelings like stress, extreme boredom, or loneliness prompt the urge to use fantasy as a hiding place rather than a planning tool. Next, you can apply a psychological technique known as mental contrasting to counteract the pull of toxic escapism. Instead of only visualizing the positive target, you must simultaneously visualize the heavy, real-world obstacles in your way. By explicitly mapping out this friction, your brain stops treating fantasy as a daydream and starts processing it as a solvable, actionable plan. Your imagination is like a fire. Managed carefully, it can warm your home, provide light, and fuel your progress. Let it burn unchecked, and it will burn the whole structure to the ground. It is a wonderful, highly dangerous tool. The only question left is whether you will actively